We're in Luke 17, and I love this story. This story blows my mind. There's no way this is the last time I'm going to teach on this story or speak on this story. It is an incredible story. It's got tons of layers in it, and we're going to read the whole thing before we break it down. And so I'm wondering if there will be a brave person, powerful reader, to read Luke 17 from verse 11, and I'll tell you when to stop. Anyone? Lindsay, do it. Yep, get to it. I'm going to say, too, if you want to stand up and do it, that'd be awesome. Yeah. 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 You can stop there. I'm going to ask you to read it again, if you don't mind. Yeah, read it again from verse 11. You got this. She ran 15 miles on Saturday. Folks, give it up. Come on, encourage her. All right? Okay. Thanks, Lindsay. Just got a personal story I wanted to share, and I'm going to read it today. I remember it was snowing, and it was morning, 5 a.m., and AM radio was saying that already schools have been closed for the day, but the worst of the storm was still to come. I was in a 4x4 truck that we couldn't afford. I called it the Silver Bullet. Silver Toyota jacked up with push-button four-wheel drive. And out ahead of me, a darkness over the world, and between myself and the darkness, a constantly crashing snow. On AM radio, schools were already closed. I taught at the University of Illinois, 90 miles away. I tried biting my tires to two circumnavigating streaks of pavement in a highway lane buried in snow. And snow crashed against the windshield, and I remember I had this moment when I hydroplaned for like the 10th time. And I thought, is there anything at all to having a 4x4? Is it all a joke? And I really think that I thought that if I had a 4x4, I could just drive anywhere. Maybe you are crutching through life in some Prius, and the same notion has crossed your mind. If I had a better vehicle, more tools in the toolbox, I could just go anywhere. And let me break it to you, it's not true. Then the wind crossed arms across chest and sat down on my truck. The sheer weight of the wind made the mighty Toyota tremble. And out my windshield, snow became ice and snow. And the world either tilted to the right or the sheer power of the storm was coming into my neck. And then all at once the wind dropped shoulder and slammed against the shotgun side of the truck and down into the center ditch when a jacked up, roll-caged, beautiful Toyota truck shooting sideways and spinning now at a risky 50 miles an hour. And in the center ditch, snow was fresh and the grass beneath frozen. So I spun and spun and spun. I flew past other vehicles, spinning and wondering if I would shoot up the other side of the center ditch into oncoming traffic. It could have been bad. I was 25 years old, and I loved driving. And I had since I was a young boy. Now, I didn't love operating a vehicle. That's not what I mean. In fact, I had a hard time understanding engines and how cars worked. I drove in a sports car a few times and was not a fan. The vehicle and its speed, that wasn't it. I loved the open road, moving from one place to another, cross country, short drives, early morning. I'd seen some things while driving. 7 years before, I was a freshman at the University of Illinois, same school I was teaching at now. I couldn't afford to live in the dorm, so I lived in a trailer in a park outside of town. And if you know me, I am a ton of energy, and I'm a bit intense, and so making easy friends was a challenge for me. I needed some kind of forced shared space, so folks near me have this moment where they think, all right, I can't escape this dude, so I'm just going to be here with him. And then after a while, I could win some people over. That's why I lived on a basketball court. Basketball is my heart. I was driving back one night from MP, which was the intramural gym, and I never showered. I never showered at the gym. I drove over in my gear and a flimsy hoodie, ran in through the freezing air, played ball until my bones and muscles were hot, and when I had literally nothing left in the tank to the point I was wobbling on my feet, I left. And this one night, it was maybe 7:30, and I walked out to my small Honda Civic hatchback, 1980 model, Miss Kitty. Dad drove it across the country, actually, with a friend, and it died on the drive. So it was a precious little car. And the heater worked well in that little car. I got to the edge of town, so warm, in shorts, not pants, so I had that heater jacked up. The temperature may have dropped, or the water content in the air shifted or something, because a drenching, thick fog settled over the world, and I slowed way down. I was so close to the trailer, maybe a mile and a half away on a road with no stop signs, and I came around a long, slow curve with a wood on my right, and on the left side of the road, a field that stretched for miles, and just then, coming around that curve, I realized, after they'd flitted past, that two deer had just streaked across the road. And right then I realized those were deer. And then a third deer, a buck, shattered into the back seat through the driver's side window. The whole deer was in the car. Instantly, a shock of cold air slammed against me, and the whirling rack of the deer sent hair and glass down the back of my shirt and all over. I sat down on the brake. I sat down on the brake carefully. I remember that I was very conscious of hydroplaning into a tree. And that deer bucked his way out of the window onto the road and lay there lifeless behind me, framed in my little rearview mirror. I pulled to a stop on the side of the road and waited for the world to stop, for my heart to find peace. In the car, Spice One was playing on the tape deck. I shut it off. The car sat idling, not warm at all, stinking of wild animal. Behind the car lay the deer, about 50 yards back. A massive, lifeless body set in the middle of the road. With the fog, I could see it, but another vehicle would not see it. What to do? Well, this is just the story I'm supposed to tell y'all, all right? Well, I had a knife under my seat, just in case. I pulled it out and set it in my lap. I had to push that deer off the road. That was the mission. There was no doubt in my mind. I zipped up my hoodie, pulled on the hood, cracked the door, and stepped into the cold. And when I turned to walk behind me to dispatch this deer, holding the blade in my hand, that jerk stood up and looked at me for a moment, possibly thinking, do I charge or do I flee? And then it shook its body and glass tinkled on the blacktop. And then it turned, dropped its back end towards the earth, and exploded into the woods. And the fog instantly gone. And there I stood like some maniac on the side of the road holding a K-bar knife with my hood up, feeling like a complete fool. And a surge of disgusting anger just filled my throat, and I was literally shaking with fury. How dare that deer destroy Miss Kitty and then not even die? Well, I thought, it may die, it may not survive, though I believed it lived. If the thought would have occurred to me to chase it in my car through the woods and over streams and roadless wastes, this idiot would have done it. Didn't that deer understand I would have dispatched it? That was the old me, though. If something dove into me going full speed, I would face it. Don't miss this. If something dove into me going full speed, I would face it, deal with it with my whole heart, soul, and strength. A friend of mine was caught up in a gambling addiction. A girl I cared about was wounded. Oh, so many things. And as is common among the perilously immature, my commitment to doing the right thing would blind me to the positive. The deer lived. That's positive. Find myself ticked off at the good thing which blocked me from doing my duty. Finally, the kinetic energy decayed, and the note stilled, and I'm back in the Toyota truck now in that ditch. I'm back in the Toyota truck. I was sitting in a ditch with a stalled-out truck and had 60 miles to town. But now I sit under the weight of this historic storm in central Illinois at 5:30 in the morning, and the longer I sit, 7 years later from hitting that deer, the colder the engine gets. And I could not start the truck. Not because I wouldn't turn the key, but I couldn't get myself to just get out of the ditch. It was my own impatience which drove me into the ditch this time, as well as my deep personal insecurity, my desire to get to town. And why? Because I wanted to make my classes the only place I felt any confidence, peace, or joy, and I didn't have the courage to stay at home, where my entire life was falling apart. That drive was gone to me, and I had to start a new drive. I took the cliche deep breath, put the hand on the wheel, bolted my eyes to the ditch and the road beyond, and a strategy began to form. Drive down the middle of the ditch, then up the side like a snowboarder, then back down into the ditch, and up the southbound side, and back on the road towards Champaign-Urbana. I edged the truck forward and basically sat frozen in the mud and ice. I couldn't budge that vehicle. I tried rocking it. I listened to the shattering mud and ice cover the truck from my spinning tires. I rolled down the windows and tried leaning out to see what was the shape of the earth beneath me. But finally, after multiple attempts, I got the gas working and rocked that truck again and again and again. And I was out and back on the road. That time in my life was before Manda. That's a BA, before Manda, all right? I tell you what, just be total transparent. I had a hitchy moment there because my daughter was in the room, and I'm talking about some serious stuff right now. Where I went through the complete failure of a relationship. I lived with somebody who loved me and then didn't love me anymore. And I had to find a way forward. I'm not blaming that person, but let me tell you what the result was. The old Johnny would have seen a challenge like that, and I would have gone after it. In fact, I would have been like, dude, I'm stuck in a ditch. This is awesome. You ask my folks, that's kind of how I was. But after getting beaten up, jacked up, hurt, lost, hating myself for so long, I just didn't have it in the tank, man. I couldn't even turn the dadgum key. Sometimes it's that way. You've got the best vehicle in the world to deal with a situation. You can't even use what you've been given because you're immobilized. We're all lepers. And I'm not saying that to disrespect lepers. We're going to talk about lepers here, okay? But leprosy, all of us have cells dying on our skin and being brushed off all the time. Leprosy is just that advanced in multiple different forms, even to the point where neurological damage and body parts can die and fall off, and a leper doesn't even know it. to much more mild forms of leprosy. I used to garden in South Texas, and I never used gloves for gardening or for demo work or anything I ever did. And my buddy Monty said, "You better use some gloves, man." I said, I don't like using pride. I don't like using gloves. He said, "You're going to get that Texas leprosy." He was dead serious. I was like, come on, mate. The Texas version of everything. And sure enough, every year, once or twice a year, I'll get a breakout of blisters right here inside my hand. All right? And it came from working garden and from doing the yard around McAllen Church of the Nazarene with Monty on a work day. I'd never had that in my life, and I still have it to this day. It's not as bad as it was 5 years ago, and it's not as bad as it was 10 years ago. Man, they used to really get it, you know. Where am I going with this? Sorry, guys. Where am I going with this? On the way to Jerusalem, Jesus was passing along between Samaria and Galilee. And as he entered a village, he was met by 10 lepers who stood at a distance, lifted up their voices, saying, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us." I want to break this down. You ready? Are you with me? You can't fall asleep, all right? 10 lepers? Are you serious? That's like a basketball team. That's like a first, there's like the starting 5 and the backup 5. How many lepers was in that village? That's a lot of lepers. And you know that wasn't all the lepers. It was the 10 lepers who were buddies. They knew about Jesus. They heard about him because they're on the border, right, of Samaria and Galilee. So they knew about Jesus, and they know what he could do, and they're all like, "All right, guys, we're going to go out there. We're going to stand off, but we're just going to go after Jesus. We're going to get him to talk to us." And they just are hollering and hollering, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us. Jesus, Master, have mercy on us." And what did he do? He heard them. He heard their voice. And when people cry out, cries sound different. Sometimes people don't even know they're crying out when they're crying. They are crying out. This is Jim Rainin. I told you a story about him before. He's that pastor I told you about that's got the tats up, full sleeve tats. He's having them removed. He preached to me. There's nothing wrong with having full sleeve tats, but I have to have mine removed, and you're to blame for it. It's not every day somebody tells you that. Like, what are you talking about? And then he told the full story about how his very affluent church in a very affluent community didn't have time to run him for clean water for kids and after. He met with Don Lee to tell him, "Stop emailing me." He told me that himself. I met with him to get him off my back, Johnny. 20 minutes in, his heart was wrecked, and he thought, my church can do this. 1 year later, their church was transformed, including a couple, 68-year-old couple who ran it together. And 6 months later, the wife lost her life to cancer. And the husband stood up in the first service I launched this year and said, "I'm running it again." And it rocked me, man. You're walking up to the building out there, you see that go fast, go alone, go farther, go together, and it's almost like, I don't know who wrote it, probably Lindsay, it's almost angrily written. Like it's aggressively written. And you look over at those numbers and the mileage these guys are doing. You want to run with Team World Vision? Guess what? You got to put in work. And it's going to take time. You have to rise up and go. You got to get with the other lepers, and you got to be like, "All right, guys, we're going to get on the edge of town, and we're going to meet up, and you know what? Jesus is going to come, and he's going to meet us there. And when he comes, we're not going to be like, 'Help me, Jesus.' Yep, just like all the other rabbis that never helped us. We're going to be like ready. And we're going to go to that group run, and we're going to holler, and we're going to call down Jesus. We're going to encourage one another. And guess what's going to happen? Something's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen, but something's going to happen. Our lives are going to be changed. Because I tell you what, man, your life is changed when you do something as a group. And some of us, and I'm not saying some of you in the room like I'm calling you out. I'm saying some of us in general. We complain all the time because we don't have a group. And that's why you don't have a group. You can't stop hacking. You can't stop complaining. I don't have any friends. I don't have any connections. Man, these guys didn't unite around the cool idea they had of themselves and the friends they wish they would have had. They united around their dadgum weakness. What if that's how we always formed community? Think of that. Well, I'd love to make friends with guys that play video games, or play basketball, or like trucks that are stuck in ditches. No. What if you unified around the fact that you're broken? You're depressed. You're fighting some kind of leprosy, one form or another. I'll tell you what would happen. The friendships you would make in that group would change your life forever. And you would find that you mattered to that group, and that if you got tired of it or really down in the dumps and you bailed, it would have a massive impact on the lives of the people there. And it's valuable to feel needed. You're designed to feel needed and wanted. It's not a curse on you. It can feel like a curse, can it? Well, these guys knew their moment had come. And they said yes, and this is what happened. Forgive me. I got some scriptures to contextualize the challenges that these lepers faced their whole lives. I forgot about this. Forgive me. Here we go. Numbers 5. Command the people of Israel that they put out of the camp everyone who was leprous or has a discharge, and everyone who is unclean through the contact with the dead. You shall put out both male and female, putting them outside the camp, that they may not defile the camp, in the midst of which I dwell. Listen to how many times outside and insider language is used, right? Get them out, get them out, get them out. And the people of Israel did so. Put them outside the camp, as the Lord said to Moses. So the people of Israel did. So first, they're kept at a distance. But second, they got to dress the part, all right? The leprous person who has the disease shall wear torn clothes, not nice clothes. You got to tear your clothes, leper. You got to let the hair of your head hang loose. He shall cover his upper lip and cry out, unclean, unclean. He shall remain unclean as long as he has the disease. He is unclean. He shall live alone. His dwelling shall be outside the camp. That is the way lepers were dealt with. And I know I'm a broken record on this. You've heard me share this anecdote many times, maybe 4 or 5 times over the years. But there's in the Talmud record of 2 rabbis in the first century, one who was famous for throwing stones at lepers from a great distance. He could probably have played in the Super Bowl, all right? He'd see a leper and he could throw stones and hit that leper from far away. And there was another rabbi, if he found out you sold as much as an egg to a leper, he was famous for organizing boycotts of you, your family, and everyone around you. Man, are we not familiar with those kinds of tactics in the church? If you've not connected this to your life yet, you're not thinking hard enough about how this applies to our lives. There are people around us that we view as lepers, as untouchables. Alicia serves them. So bummed she's not here tonight. There are people around us that we view as outsiders. We're insiders. And it's almost human nature. Even the most extreme outsider will still find something that he or she's an insider with. Sometimes it's our own pain, right? I'm the insider of my own pain and my own struggle. You're outside. We'll always find some way to demarcate lines to keep people out. You ever heard the name John G. Avildsen? Anybody know this name? John G. Avildsen. Seriously? Anybody heard the Save the Tiger? Jack Lemmon got his Oscar in that film. Yeah. Anybody heard the movie The Karate Kid? Lean on Me? The Power of One? Rocky? John G. Avildsen directed all those films, many others. He was a director. His favorite director, his hero, was Capra, who wrote and directed It's a Wonderful Life, arguably the greatest film of all time. Right? And he directed Rocky, and the quote, if you didn't see that quote, was, I thought boxing was stupid when he first came. Because the problem with Rocky was Stallone, who wrote Rocky. I know y'all want me to do that musical that Hugh Jackman's in. I'm not preaching out that yet, okay? I'm in Rocky today, okay? All right? It's a good movie. The gospel is in that movie. Stallone comes to the production company, and then he says, I'm acting in my own film. And then they lost all these big name directors as a result of it. But John Avildsen said, yes, they had a $1 million budget. They went over budget a little bit. They were pretty tight on budget. And this is the famous scene in Rocky, round 14, right? Where Rocky is in the ditch. There's a moment where he is in the ditch. He has to decide whether he's going to go. So you got to think about these lepers. Their whole lives they've been lepers. And guess what? Every leper that ever came before them in their family was outside the camp too. All the way back to when those words were written in Leviticus and in Numbers. Think of that. That's how long they were outsiders. And there's a moment where Rocky has done so good that he is even encouraged to stay in the ditch by his mentor, Mickey. Now I'm going to play the clip for you right now. Here we go. All right, that's the big moment. The music is soaring. You think Rocky is out. Mickey is telling him, down, down, stay down. To go back to John G. Avildsen, he is known as the master of the underdog story. You know, his dad came from nothing. His classic American story. His dad had no money, no skills, no training, came from nothing. Worked his way up, became incredibly successful. And John, he says it himself, I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth. And then he was kind of a playboy, ran around, surfing, you know, traveling the world, doing whatever he wanted to do. And he just kept feeling this pull back for what his dad did with him when he was young. His dad, his first kind of expensive purchase he ever made was a video camera. And they were so pumped about the video camera that they made the corniest home movies you've ever seen. They actually would set it up, and they'd all come in dressed up as characters from Peter Pan or something like that, and I'm talking about grown adults. And they would do performances, and just to hear John G. Avildsen talk about it, you could tell he don't care what anybody thinks about his family. He loves that tradition. And that led him to want to tell stories. And he kept finding himself gravitating back to stories about his dad. Why? Because his dad died when he was young. His dad never saw him come into his own as a director. And he wanted that approval from his dad so bad, you know. Well, this is the magic moment, and there are so many Christ figures in the movie Rocky if you've never seen it. Rocky is probably the biggest Christ figure because if you don't know the movie, everybody in this whole movie, including Apollo, is a broken and flawed person that desperately needs something. Not a lot of movies like that, where there's no redeemable, perfect character. There's no priest or super. Everybody's broken, okay? But then one person shows up at this moment after saying she would not show up. You know who it is. And so I'll show you the rest of the scene, and you can see the shift. Spiritual connection here and the shift that happens in the scene.
Good. I can't see nothing. Gotta open my eye. Come here, man.
I'll make you watch the eye-cutting scene, all right? Think about that moment, guys. He is on the canvas. And before that, he is getting his backside handed to him in boxing matches in his own gym. Before that, he's working for a loan shark, breaking people's thumbs in order to collect money. But with no education. I mean, this guy is out. He's an outsider in every way. He's a reject. But there's this one moment, man, this one moment where he could stay down. And why in the world would he get back up when he's been physically destroyed? And there's that one person who believes in him. She's so terrified to see him fight. She's never seen a boxing fight. She never wanted to see him fight. She walks in there, and there's that moment, the slow, closed eye, which is absolutely a moment of prayer. He is trying to hit that note, that there's a spiritual connection there. He rises up, and he goes from down and out, his manager telling him to those 2 punches. They show 4 punches, but it's the same 2 punches showed from 2 different camera angles. And those 2 body punches that light Apollo up and set up the 15 round for the great round, the great moment of Rocky's life. And I think, how does this connect with, so verse 14, Jesus saw them, he said to them, go and show yourselves to the priests. And as they went, they were cleansed. I know it's only one verse, and I'm not going to make too much of this. But the first thing is this, and this is Scripture speaking to you. This is Scripture speaking to me. This is Jesus speaking to the lepers. Jesus saw them. He saw them, man. Any other rabbi coming into town with 10 lepers on the side of the road, he'd been like, not far enough back. Cover your upper lip. Holler out, unclean, unclean. No, they went for it, man. They went for it. Master, you help us. Master, help. They're hollering out. Imagine 10 of us right now just hollering out like that and not stopping. Jesus sees them. He sees their lives. He sees their pain. He sees their brokenness. He sees them. He sees the cultural rejection that they've endured from the church their whole lives and maybe multiple generations, which in that day and age, if you're rejected from the church, you're just rejected, period. There was no governing government that was not somehow church-connected in Jewish culture because they were living in an oppressive government culture. The second thing is, of course, Jesus, in his manipulative, jerky way, I love him, doesn't say, oh, lepers, I know for years you've labored with your leprosy. I just want you to know, let's have a moment of feeling here. No. He sees these 10 guys and he says, go. Go. Show yourselves to the priests. I'm not going to touch you. I'm not going to put mud in your eye and heal. I'm not going to do any of the things you've heard about me doing. I want you to go. Show yourselves to the priest. He doesn't even heal them right then. And it does remind me so much of, man, when we stand up when I was at OCF and we launched Team World Vision this year. And I said from stage, which I have been forgetting to say this, but that our training was designed for 60-year-old overweight men and women who never run. I said that from stage at OCF. And a woman walked up to me at the end and she handed me her commitment form, trembling with tears. And she said, I'm 60 years old. I've been overweight my whole life. And God is calling me to do this. Am I doing the right thing? I said, yep, you are. I put my arm around her. We took a selfie. I should have had it in the deck. I don't have it. We took a selfie. We celebrated. And I just saw a picture from the group run posted recently. She is still in the game, buddy. There's that moment when Jesus calls you to go. And he's sending you to go with a group. And I tell you what, man, that is what life is all about. There's something in your soul, especially when you've been wounded, that says, avoid the group, back away. Oh no, you're introverted. Go read your little blog online about how introverts have the right to be, go recover on your own. You can use all the excuses you want. When you fight through that junk, man, and stay with the dadgum group of lepers that you're among, fight through, get to it, and go on that journey, I'm telling you, Jesus will transform you on that journey, and that's what they found out. As they went, they were cleansed. As they went, they were cleansed. I yanked a bunch of pictures back out this deck. I didn't feel it was appropriate. LTGs that have fallen apart. Other expressions of ministry that have fallen apart. Over what? Over one awkward conversation and a lack of interest and care by the other stinking lepers. And somebody convincing themselves they're not a leper. That's the worst. When you got someone and you're connecting with them and you're connected around your brokenness, and now Jesus is raising you from the dead. So somebody gets cocky, they bail because they're too smart or too good or too holy, and the whole thing dies. And what do we do with that? I don't know. Last week, man, that time of communion that we had was so special. It was one of the best times of communion I've ever had with this church in 10 years. Why? I don't know. It just was. And I felt like we all just came together and unified, and God just was with us. You know? It was powerful. It was meaningful. Now, there's two things I want to say to close this section out. Sometimes we are called to rise and go for healing. Sometimes we are called to rise and go for calling. These 10 lepers are sent. Look what happens next. There we go. Then one of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back, praising God with a loud voice. He fell on his face at Jesus' feet, giving him thanks. Now he was a Samaritan. Now there's this one who turns back. Has he been to the priest yet? He has not been to the priest yet. I don't think anybody can argue against that. There's a couple scholars that do. I don't believe he's been to the priest. I really don't. Why? He's an outside. He's a Samaritan. He's an outsider. He's ethnically, racially outside. He's culturally outside. He is an outsider. He is a Rocky. He is an Adrian. He is a Paulie. He's an outsider, man. And what do outsiders do that insiders don't? Well, when an insider is healed of leprosy, they're thinking, I really do want to go to that priest who's dissed me my whole life, and I'm going to show him I'm clean, and I'm going to be back in the limelight in my community. But that one Samaritan outsider, he's not thinking that way. Who's his priest? Say it. Jesus is his priest. He realizes he's healed. He's got to go show himself to the priest. He goes back to Jesus, you know? And then that moment in his life, he's transformed forever because he's the only one of the 10 that gets the second arise and go, which we're going to get to in a minute. But I want to keep on this insider-outsider thing. Luke, outsider. What are you talking about, John? Was he a disciple? Probably a disciple of Paul. Probably around Jesus in the early days. Not one of the 12 disciples. And this is the only gospel where you're told this story in this way. Luke saw those Samaritans, man. Remember back in Luke 9, when John and James wanted to call down fire and devour those Samaritans that rejected Jesus, and Jesus is like, chill out. Our whole ministry here is empowering these minority groups to reject us. That is actually an act of love to them. That's what World Vision does. We'll go to 15 villages. 13 of them say we're all in for development. 2 of them are like, get away from us. We don't trust you. We say, okay, no problem. We go do the development with the 13. And in Senegal, I know one story in Senegal that Tori Olson tells. It's an amazing story. Both the villages' chiefs come and say, we are blown away by what you've done. But if we would have been like, all right, fine, villages, not only will we bail, but you're out. Fire come down from heaven and devour you. No life change would have ever happened. The outsider says, Jesus is my rabbi, my priest. But the insider says, Jesus put things right with me so I could get right with the real priests. Rush away. Show my neighbors that I'm an insider too. Outsiders think, I will rush back and proclaim to Jesus, this worked. In doing so, he indicates not just a physical healing, but a deeper transformation, right? And I'm so not arguing right now that the other 9 weren't fully saved. Or there's a lot of weird commentary on this stuff. I mean, in fact, let me read for you from Acts chapter 5. Can I do that without putting it on the screen? And more than ever, believers were added to the Lord, multitudes of both women and men, so that they even carried out the sick into the streets and laid them on cots and mats, that as Peter came by, at least his shadow might fall on some of them. Right there in Acts 5, all you had to do was be healed to be counted in. And I know right now there's probably some pastor colleagues who want to kill me for saying that. But there it is in Acts 5. What does that mean? That means that you don't have to have a PhD in theology to be saved. Timar's autistic brother can be saved. We have people around us that don't understand the 14 articles and all the other things. They can be saved. Experiencing the presence of Jesus. How educated do you think those lepers were? Come on. So Jesus answers and says, we're not 10 cleansed. Where are the 9? Was no one found to return to give praise to God except this foreigner? Now, I'm going to give you a biased analysis of this, and I'm almost done with my teaching. It is biased, and I'm not joking. I have to say that outright, okay? This is not, I could be wrong. This is Johnny's bias. I think Jesus is impugning the very priests and the very people that he is from when he says this, not those 9 lepers. Because a little bit later, the Pharisees come to Jesus and they say, where's the kingdom of heaven at? And Jesus, just a couple verses down, and Jesus says, oh, you're not going to see it. I'm sorry. Because it's right in your midst. The literal translation is the kingdom of God is right inside you. Remember those Pharisees? Outside of the cup, clean. Inside of the cup, nasty, stored up, stocked up, jacked up junk. That leper sees it. Outsiders see it. And it's like you're blind to something if you don't know what shape it was, what shape it's supposed to take. You know, I'm going off. It's not what I got in my notes. If you don't know what something is and you see its shape, you're often blind to what it is and to its impact. We were at Knott's Berry Farm a few weeks ago. We were looking up in the sky, and there were these 2 lights in the sky, and one light looked like it was pulling the other, and there was these halos of light around them and all this mist coming off them. I'm not making this up, man. We saw it in the sky, and everybody at Knott's Berry Farm was up there taking pictures, and people were freaking out. And I cracked a joke about it, you know. I could tell that the night was becoming tense because it was the shape of something. We didn't know what it was. And it was a launch that SpaceX did. When we finally knew what it was, it didn't necessarily drop the tension. Because we thought, well, yep, if the missile's ever launched, that's probably is what it's going to look like, you know. He said to him, rise and go your way. Your faith has made you well. Let's say tonight, we pray for healing, like we did last week. You're going to go someplace from that moment, right? You're going to rise up and go someplace. The 9 are going to go to their hometown priests, to their friends and family, because that's what we're programmed to do. That's who owns our destiny. That's who defines us. That's if they approve of us, then we finally matter. Let me tell you something. You learned something from this Samaritan leper. Listen to what I'm saying right now and learn this. Let it echo in your heart. When I was in that ditch, I was the golden boy in my family, man. Up until I entered that relationship and it fell apart. And I had sin on me. I had brokenness on me, failure on me. And I lost my momentum in a major way. Because all I could think about was how I let everybody around me down. Including the person I was in the relationship with, who I was always also kind of hurt by. I mean, you know how relationships are that way. The moment you get out of that and you say, I'm not defined by my community and what people say to me anymore. I'm defined by what Jesus says about, listen to me, how Jesus views me, what he says about me, my Heavenly Father, how he views me, what he says about me. You will turn your back on that same old road to your hometown and you will instead run with all you got to Jesus. Maybe you are getting tempted to view the way you've lived your life in service to others as a curse in your life, as something that's deadening your nerves or breaking you down. You need to be brought out of that. The only place you're going to ever find healing or be brought out of that is on your knees before Him. Learning to love Him, receiving His love, because He does love you. That's it. That's all I got. The offering plate's in the back. If you bring an offering this week, it's a tithe week for you. Bring it joyfully. Giving is the fun part of life. If you forgot about that, remember it. There's nothing more fun than talking to the kids about what we're going to get for so-and-so on their birthday or for Christmas. They explode with ideas because giving is the fun part of life. If you don't have a gift to bring this week, it's okay. It's not a measure of your importance or your significance. It's something we do out of love to worship God. And I'm going to pray, and we're going to shut her down. Heavenly Father, I thank you for this incredible church family. Every face is here tonight. I'm thrilled. Opened my eyes and saw faces I've not seen in a long time. After the worship time, so incredible. Father, I thank you for that promise that we can give our pride, our widow's mite, all that we have. You will take it. You will redeem it. Lord, not going through really points of teaching tonight as much as just walking with these lepers through their journey and trying to remember. I'm not trying to pray long right now, God, but we're trying to remember. Sometimes we're down flat on the mat. Or our neighbor, our friend is, someone else in this room is, or down flat on the mat. And the people around us are saying, stay down, stay down. Father, let us be the ones that pray. Let us be the ones that enter in and touch that life and tell them to get up and arise and go, to get up, to get out of that junk. Because our lives are at stake. And not everybody has that, and not everybody can be sucked into the affluence, of money-making path, the career that they have, this Westchester life or West LA life or wherever someone's living, where we can get swallowed up in the accomplishments and not be thinking about the micro-level journey of our own significance. The calling, the people who are hurting that you're putting in our way. There is no distraction from our leprosy. And we know we need to see you. We stand on the road crying out to you, God. Call us, hear us, heal us, and send us on our way. In Jesus' name I pray.